The classroom was supposed to be safe, but in seconds it turned into a stage. Phones were lifted, screens glowing. At the front, a black teacher stood frozen as a rich kid turned her life, her accent, her neighborhood, into a cruel joke. Laughter crashed over her like a wave while the camera kept recording, capturing every flinch, every smirk, every whispered comment about how she did not belong there. By the end of the day, that video would be everywhere. Everyone thought it would destroy her. No one imagined she would turn that same video into a lesson that would change his life and the entire school forever. Ms. Carter had worked her whole life to stand in that classroom. She was the only black teacher at a wealthy private school where students arrived in polished cars and disappeared into futures already paved for them. She carried herself with quiet authority, the kind built from long nights, second jobs, and a belief that education could rewrite destinies. She noticed the small things others ignored, the way some parents avoided eye contact at conferences, how certain students mimicked her behind her back and quickly straightened when she turned around. The curriculum barely mentioned people who looked like her, so she added stories the textbook had left behind. Then there was Liam, son of a real estate mogul whose name was on a shiny new wing of the school. Captain of teams, center of photos, effortless in his privilege. He had learned early that rules bent around him. To Liam, Ms. Carter was not a person to respect. She was a test of how far his untouchable status could go. The project that changed everything sounded simple. Each group would explore how race and wealth shaped opportunity in their city. Ms. Carter assigned it with care, hoping it might chip away at the bubble her students lived in. Liam felt attacked before he even started. He complained to friends that the assignment was a guilt trip. Somewhere between boredom and arrogance, his group decided to make the whole thing into a joke. Instead of research, they collected mocking images, exaggerated stereotypes, and screenshots of rundown neighborhoods they had never set foot in. On presentation day, Ms. Carter sensed something off as soon as Liam walked in, grin already forming. When his group took the front, the first slide flashed onto the screen. A collage of caricatures, side by side with a photo of their polished school. The implication was clear. The punchline was crueler. He compared his world of privilege to places like the one she had grown up in, treating poverty and blackness as entertainment. He made a show of referencing teachers who probably came from there, his eyes sliding toward her as the class burst into laughter. Some laughed because they found it funny. Others laughed because they were afraid to be the only ones not laughing. Phones captured her stillness, the tightening around her eyes, the way she swallowed every word she wanted to say. She finished grading their presentation as if it were any other assignment, thanked the class, and dismissed them with a steady tone that felt like a lie. That evening, the clip spread through group chats like wildfire. Edits added music and mocking captions. Comments poured in, some praising Liam's savage sense of humor, some quietly horrified. Alone in her small apartment, Ms. Carter watched the video of herself being humiliated on repeat. For a moment, quitting felt easier than walking back into that building. Then something inside her shifted. She walked away. The laughter would win. She stayed. She could turn their cruelty into a mirror they could not ignore. The next morning, she met with the principal, not broken, but determined. Instead of demanding expulsion, she proposed something far more uncomfortable: a mandatory school-wide program on bias, power, and respect, built around what had happened in her classroom. The administration, already nervous about the video leaking beyond campus, agreed. A week later, every student filed into the auditorium. The lights dimmed. Without faces, without names, the now familiar audio played over a black screen. The mocking tone, the laughter, the silence that followed. Stripped of the safety of the crowd, the cruelty sounded different, colder. After the audio faded, Ms. Carter stepped onto the stage. She did not mention Liam's name. Instead, she spoke about being the only black teacher in rooms like this her entire life. She described teachers who had doubted her, counselors who had lowered their expectations, strangers who had decided who she was before she opened her mouth. She painted the neighborhoods Liam had mocked not as punchlines, but as places full of people who loved, worked, and dreamed. Over the following days, every class participated in what she called an empathy lab. Students read anonymous confessions from their own peers about times they had felt less than because of race, money, or background. Alumni came back to share stories of quiet discrimination they had carried for years. In one session, students were given printed transcripts from a recent classroom incident and asked how each person might have felt. The target, the crowd, the one making the joke. Liam recognized his own words on the page. For the first time, he saw them divorced from laughter and they terrified him. Consequences came, but not the kind he expected. Liam lost positions he had taken for granted, was required to attend ongoing sessions, and had to sit face-to-face with classmates who told him how that video made them feel ashamed, unsafe, complicit. His apology, when it finally came, was not shouted over laughter in a crowded room. It was quiet, halting, and for once, not backed by his father's influence. The school changed, too. Policies shifted from polished brochures to real accountability. A new scholarship was created in honor of underrepresented educators. Curriculum was rewritten to include the histories Ms. Carter had been adding on her own. Students who once laughed now spoke up when lines were crossed. Ms. Carter still carried the memory of that day, but it no longer felt like a wound she had to hide. It had become proof that dignity could be more powerful than humiliation, and that the hardest lessons were sometimes taught without shouting or revenge. One viral moment had started as a joke aimed at breaking her. Instead, it exposed an entire culture and forced it to ask a harder question. When cruelty becomes entertainment, are we just bystanders, or are we part of the problem?